Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I announced that I'm running for mayor of Abbotsford, and I'm going to show you the issues of Abbotsford. But one of the biggest things my heart's set on now with Abbotsford residents is to remove the Abbotsford police that were involved in massive organized crime in Abbotsford. They were Henry's you-know-what. And they were lifting and threatening for Henry Braun. They were running interference for Henry Braun to hold jobs and land deals, but to hold the municipal elections so Henry and his friends could benefit. It was well known that Henry Braun became a mayor of Abbotsford, and with his punk son, he went in here and set up the official community plan to lobby it to him, Ron Funka diverse. The question is, who's tied in diverse that you could switch zoning from 200 to 400? And all these things. But today, what are I doing on the city grounds? Yesterday, I showed you a shocking story of Dave Sidhu, who's the sitting council. Him and Ross Siemens were like this. Lifted his dad's property on Tracy Road. That property, now Andy Sidhu, sold it on ag land for cold storage. In return, he got a house built. But what did Andy Sidhu do that could reward him to shut down Joe on Short Road? Andy Sidhu, Dave Sidhu's dad, who's the Chancellor of the UFB, had to fulfill Henry's promise through Dave Sidhu. Block me in the election so Ross wouldn't get scandaled, so we can have all these big job sites and everything else. You could see, as I learned from Darren Braun, I'm going to show you a lot more. Today, I'm on a hot touching story that's always in my heart and always with Abbotsford, about the homeless. You've seen the BC Conservative Armin speak today about the homeless and what David Eby done here in Abbotsford. We should fight for the vulnerable no matter what, no matter who we are. They have a right, and especially when they've been knocked down. Gosh sakes, we don't know how many Henry jacked out of Abbotsford for the land that he wanted. Maybe had the cops threaten him for a piece of property. We don't know who these individuals are. We don't know what took place. But they should not be abused on the street. But we need, I want to correct Armin about David Eby. We need to go after Archway Community Services. We need to go after them people that are supposed to provide care, like the CEO of Archway, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, scamming, raised money in the flood victims, kept that money, name of the flood victims, and went out and brought real estate. And Ross Siemens waived his taxes as a non-profit when he made profit. These services that are supplied for the homeless, these people been misabusing and taking advantage. So we need a new approach. We need people that can take care of the homeless, people that can. So I want to take you back. Remember when Pamela Alexis was announcing the Red Lion Hotel? Henry Braun went around before Pam, the NDP lady, could say it, months in advance going, Archway Community Services is going to get that. Archways. This is not about helping the homeless. This is about people profiting and filling their pockets off the rich, off the poor and the vulnerable to make it rich, like Rob San Diego of Archway Community Services. Archway Community Services should be under investigation. Because it's tied to the establishment, and you can see Dave Lowens babying everything out for Ross and all these people, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of the week. We're going to change that under my leadership. We're going to bring people in that can supply the needs, fix that housing situation. And as mayor, the first thing I would be doing, I wouldn't be saying David Eby. I would be correcting Armin today and saying, no, Armin. It is the shithole mayor of Abbotsford. You got to get your facts straight. I'm a BC Conservative, but get your facts straight. The shithole mayor of Abbotsford had done this for profit, lifted to Rob San Diego. He put rocks on the homeless, cut down the Tree of Hope where they were, in order to help Ron Funkaddiverse chase them all over here on city grounds. So let me correct you, Armin. Let me correct you before David Eby corrects you. The homeless would not be campused on my city or here. This would not be under David Eby. The homeless were moved from off of Gladys Avenue in front of the Salvation Army where they fed and looked after, and the tree of hope was cut down viciously by Henry Braun and Ross Siemens. And then rocks on taxpayers' dollars were hauled there. Why? Why? For Ron Funkaddiverse to have an illegal site. So how do we fix the homeless problem? We go after the legal criminal acts that were taking place in the city, jobs and everything else, and we seize them, and we have care homes, and we just turn Rob San Diego away. And what we do is we take the job site down on Rob Funk and we put the homeless in there. So what are we looking at, ladies and gentlemen? Pierre Poilievre said it the best. A conservative to a conservative. These services that are supplied to the homeless and the vulnerable and the weak, basically Archway, Rob San Diego, are white-collar crimes, people that are taking advantage of these services to gain profit. Rob San Diego, between him and his wife, making $600,000 off of this. Raised money in the name of the flood victims. These services ain't about the homeless. Rob San Diego never stood up that Henry was cutting a rock, putting rocks on him, and all these stuff. But the city councilor, Dave Lowens, he's actually Henry's lackey. He runs around trying to tweet out everything. This problem is basically, this whole problem in Abbotsford is to do with this loser gas station boy that thought he could run the city, and Henry said, Ross, I'll run it from behind. You could see it. No appearances, no taking pictures with the police, no nothing, no standing beside the BC Conservatives, lifting land for his buddy Dave Sadu down on Tracy Road, shutting down other people and stealing their ideas. Fast-tracking everything Henry sat on. If you go into city meetings where Henry said, I got to step off, I own half a share in there, you can see Ross Siemens fast-tracking it. Here I learned this today from the city staff. The city staff said, Ross Siemens is going around with certain councillors saying people that steal out of here and do what Ross is doing, they just get to quit. All I'll do is get humiliated. I get to quit and not under my leadership. We're going to go after you. This time, this one won't be that we get to retire and we go. He took advantage of the vulnerable. He abused the vulnerable and the weak with rocks. He used every avenue there was in the newspaper to try to get sympathy that it wasn't him, that it was other people. He went in and used the city for collaborating and racketeering, helped Dave Sadu and Andy Sadu. Ross Siemens knew what he was doing. Ross Siemens needs to go with Abbotsford First, that was his slates, and he needs to go before the Supreme Court. To Armin, I would really respect that this gets fixed very fast. The fault of the Abbotsford homeless are on the mayor and the profit organization of Archway Community Services that stood to gain. And you could see how hard they have been working to get beds and beds and beds. It's the white-collar crime. We need to come in to Abbotsford. We need to come in and we need to wipe out these societies that took advantage of it, especially when you're claiming you're non-profit and you made profit. Archway Community Service made thousands of dollars off the farmers. Rob San Diego did. He didn't give it to the farmers. Armin, he went and took that money and bought real estate. I would have really respected a mayor who had power, would be pushing on David Eby to get that money out of Archway and have Rob San Diego charged to build them homes already how many years ago since the flood was there. So how do we fix the problem? We have to go after the non-profit organizations that are taking advantage of it here in Abbotsford. And we need to go after Rob San Diego. We need to go after Ross Siemens, who was doing this. Rob San Diego is tied to who? Let me correct you who he's tied to. Rob San Diego is Andy Sadu's very very, very best friend and Dave Seduce. Ross Siemens used this city to sell Dave Seduce property on Tracy Road. Then told Dave Sedu and Andy Sedu, we'll fast track it, we'll have cold storage put there, and nobody will be able to stop us, and we'll put Joe and other farmers that are out, and me and Abbotsford First, which is Kelly Shaw, Patricia Dreesen, will outvote you and fast track you, and then with Vicky Hopes. So why ain't these stories in the Abbotsford newspaper? Why? Why ain't the 12.4 million in the newspaper? Why ain't diverse Ron Funk changing the zoning in the newspaper? Why ain't Marcus Dalvis, the 30-story tower? And why ain't that Andy Seduce property and his house and all these pictures? Let me explain why. Henry Brown was best friends of Rick Rake, the pro editor of Abbotsford News. He brought Tyler Olson on board, and Rick Rakes was ghostwriting to help Henry make him look good and slander everybody else there was around. He brought that rag on board. When I ran as mayor, you saw what Vicky Hopes did. It was the RCMP admission said she was trying to, publicly humiliate you so you would go away. Humiliation would make you go away. I want to tell Vicky Hopes and Ken, it made me stronger thanks to the RCMP. But I want to tell you, I want to be able to stand on the world stage and outline that Vicky Hopes was directly covering investment, collaborating, racketeering, insider trading, and everything. And why was she doing that? Why did she cover Andy Sedu's property and all these things on Ross Siemens? Why would you cover that, Vicky Hopes? You want to tell the general community why a big outlet newspaper that's supposed to go after hot stories like it did on Bruce covered that? And why ain't we going after Archway Community Services that's supposed to supply these services and saying, no. I'm asking David Eby to take his money back, pull his money back out of Abbotsford immediately that was promised with the Minister of Housing. Pull it back out. We need to go after Archway Community Services. We need to make sure that they respect to do the service and look after the vulnerable, and they didn't. Archway Rob San Diego just saw this as a scam. He don't care about the homeless. He don't care about anything, and you knew how he was doing it. This city had an enforcement right behind here, the Abbotsford Police. And the Abbotsford Police, the private police, were carrying Henry's threats to drop videos and drop everything, or I will personally bury you. That meant personally burying you, wreck you, charge you, infraction you, lie before the courts, and everything. When I learned that Henry's son was working in this city as a proving officer in front of his dad, rushing all these jobs for Ron Funka Diverse, and everything I did knew, and all of Henry's partners, and Mike DeYoung and Ed Fast were Henry's best friends and not calling it out. They stood to make hundreds of millions of dollars. I ran for mayor, gonna announce it, and watched Henry sweat to load Ross Siemens. Ross Siemens, I want your resignation immediately. As mayor, when I come in, I'm gonna go after your assets, insider trading, and everything you frauded off of these residents. Vicky Hopes ain't gonna keep it down. You can see it, Ross. She ain't gonna keep it down. Not at all. We're gonna go after that. So to Armin, we need to come to an understanding, and that understanding is right now, that Archway Community Services money should be helped. These homeless in front of the city, and not because of David Eby. That I'll correct you right now, and I'll correct everybody, even if it's against the BC Conservatives. Henry Brown went down with Ross Siemens and tugged hundreds and hundreds of rocks on Gladys Avenue where the Salvation Army feeds them to get them out of there for diverse, and scattered them everywhere, and scattered them to the people that cared about them. And Archway Community Services never spoke up. None of them the organizations that got their hand out that are supposed to care for the homeless never spoke up. You know why? Because it was going against the establishment that was trying to illegally build apartment blocks there. Ron Funka Diverse. Now, you want to open a can of fighting, and you want to open a can of things. is when we go down this avenue, I'll stand up for what's right and wrong, and even if that's against, to help defend David Eby today. And I'll stand up any day what's right and wrong against anybody. Let's get to the bottom of the issues. This punk gas station boy was in the Abbotsford defrauded. And that's the first thing we got to do, and we got to get leadership here. And we got to get leadership back in Abbotsford. I'm live, Abbotsford, British Columbia.